Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
I consent.
It's been consensual.
That's right.
Marisa is on as well. So we are here live on Zoom with Brandon Knight, the spiritual, ritualistic, magical guru of the world, who is going to tell us a little bit about his story and explain how we all fix all our shit easily so that we're all successful, happy, and in love and rich. So with that, welcome, Brandon.
Oh, thank you, Trey. It's good to be here.
No pressure.
No.
No pressure.
No, you can shrug it off. I mean, if I'm the plumb line, man, we're in trouble. For sure.
I love plumb lines. Eileen, how are you feeling today? You know you're a little under the weather.
That's correct.
You know what'll fix it?
Magic.
Ritual magic. So Brandon, tell us a little bit about.
I put on makeup. I thought that was kind of magic.
I definitely want to get into the magic and all the fun stuff, but for those that don't know you, Brandon, give us a little bit about your story on how you went from a mere baby to where you are today and this whole crazy spiritual journey and all things.
Gosh, I wish I was as valuable as I was as a baby. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I guess to kind of do an elevator pitch on it, I was born a preacher's kid, a very staunch religious background. My dad was a very, very gun-ho Christian preacher. It saved his life. I mean, when he converted to Christianity, he was able to get off alcohol and form a family and everything like that. And he was in Marine Recon, very wild person out in California, so a complete life switch for him. So he wholeheartedly believed in what he preached and lived it and expected me to live it. And the thing that I noticed was that throughout my childhood, I would have teachings in the church that were cool and all, they seemed to be well enough alone, love your neighbor as yourself. Some of the other things about being saved and whatnot, and feeling shame and guilt around being born were interesting, growing up with that. And coming through that, I started to understand that I would have actual real life experiences with spiritual aspects of life that we all have as human beings, such as encounters during prayer or whatever it may be, in intense moments in your life where something other than what you can explain happened in that moment. And it was outside the realms of the church to really fill in the gaps. There were gaps there, like, what about this? Well, I just saw a ghost. What about that? And the church was like, it's a demon, leave it alone. It's all
stay away.
Exactly. Yeah. So they kind of treated it like the plague, and all questions that the Bible didn't answer, you're just shit out of luck. It was just not going to be something that you would understand in your lifetime, Mm-hmm. And as I got older and kept on having spiritual experiences that were outside the realm of capacity for the church and the Bible to adequately meet those questions, I kept on, it's almost like I logged all those experiences as I grew up. And I was a Christian, and I became an evangelist. Even I became a preacher and evangelist, was speaking in front of, hundreds of people lining the altars. We would have, Christian hoedowns, just completely, it was everything you'd expect and see off of Benny Hinn,
How old were you when you started doing that evangelizing? And I'm envisioning a big tent, like the revival, and just hammering it.
Yeah, man. There were literally people lined up to get in, and seats were full, like that kind of thing. I started becoming like a pretty popular evangelist in the area. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I would have to travel. I even traveled out of state to go and speak at churches and stuff like that. But what it was is, it was a lot like that. And so
How old were you?
I think I was 19 when I started.
Okay.
I was 19 when I started that. So, I took it very seriously. I would pray for hours and hours before even developing a sermon. And I would study a sermon for months at a time, develop and understand the original language that the Bible was speaking in when it went over the section that I was preaching over, give it more of a three-dimensional aspect. Like, I really dug into stuff. When it comes to spiritual stuff, of all kinds, whether it be metaphysical, Christian, Islam, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. I study it in depth. It's something that my mind just locks onto. And I'm like, oh, I start to understand it, and I start to get hungry for more, and it just kind of pours in. And so that was kind of a pattern that I started. Just understanding spiritual things has always been a thing for me. And so as I developed that and everything, I started having experiences still outside of the realm of what Christianity could really fill in the gaps with, even though I believed in Christ. And I'd encountered his spirit like I understood him, as far as an experience for me, and so got a little bit older and got married at a very young age. I would say like maybe 21. I was just a baby when I got married my first round. And she was older than I was, 6 years older, and she'd encountered Gestalt therapy and things that really transformed the psychology of the self. Right. And she, understanding yourself and others was something that was popular, like in the 80s and whatnot. You'd have retreats for the weekends where you go and cathartically release and move the energy in the body. And that way, when you move the energy in the body and the emotions in the body, you move them out. The concept was that you could change the belief structures around trauma. So if I have a belief structure around relationships because of trauma with my mother, for instance, right, then that would not move until I got the emotions out. Once I got the emotions out, then I could change the belief structure and I could have better relationships. That was the concept of those weekend retreats. They would take you really deep into your catharsis, take you into your trauma, and take you out on the other side and make you strong and help you rebuild. And that was the concept. And I first encountered that when I was 23. And I encountered more truth in a weekend of that than I ever had in my entire long realm of Christianity and being in the church. I was like, wow, man, this is the shit. This is it. I have found some fucking truth. This is truth. Because I saw people transform. I transformed. Then that weekend, like, it was nuts. I never forgot it. I didn't understand what it meant to be embodied, what it meant to be in my body, and pay attention to the emotions there and how the energy runs and what happens and how things unfold. And it was a new level of awareness for me. And so that kind of changed everything for me. I went from, really making like Christ the centerpiece and understanding my belief structures there to really understanding what evolution of the self meant. Right. It was more than just bending the knee and having salvation, and that was it. Then you just avoid sin for the rest of your life. That's as far as you can go, yeah, I've done it. I just wash my hands of my life then. And so the thing that I encountered was, whoa, man, there's layers to life and there's layers to the self, and I can unfold and unpack myself in ways that I never knew I could. And so I got into that really deep and didn't have the money to really follow up on it the way I wanted to. I was so young, didn't have a career yet, all that stuff. But circle back around years later, in 2008, I got in a car accident and I couldn't walk for 8 months of my life. And everybody thought I was going to have surgery. I'd have my parents carry me to the bathroom. It was the most, humbling time of my life. I was screaming in pain every time I moved. And I thought, I've been taught that my belief structure has got me here. Even though it was an accident, I know that my belief structure paved the way for me to get in this position. And so I have to take responsibility for it because I have 2 kids to provide for, and I can't be on my back with them. And so there.
What were the injuries from the car accident?
What happened was, I the axles on the car were kind of bent, the back axle, and when I went around a curvy part of the road on the interstate, it was raining, and the car just did a 720 and hit an embankment. I walked away from it just fine, but the problem was that it turned my hips on their axis, and when it did that, about 2 weeks later, they didn't go back in place, and so all the nerves running from the top of my body all the way down were being hit by by my hips. And so I could not move without excruciating pain. And so,
brutal.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Were you still married at that point?
No, I wasn't married. I was separated at that point. But so while I was in bed, I thought, I'm not going to just lay here and take this. I'm not going to have surgery either, because that can just, mess up my life for the rest of my life. And so I went and I did what I knew to do. I started challenging my belief structures through binaural beats and meditation 3 hours a day. Even though I couldn't move, I started to really get in my body and started to become aware of myself and the structures. And I just started being guided, allowed myself to be guided by my intuition. And I started getting on the net and I found out about plant medicines and shamanism. And when I found out about ayahuasca, I was like, that's it. That's my next thing. That's what I've got to do to really get out of this cycle. And so I developed my own. I was big into health and wellness. I developed my own program to save my back through exercises and whatnot. And I did the meditations every day. And in 9 months, 10 months, I could walk on a cane. And by that, I was still walking on a cane by the summer in a lot of pain, but I could move. And I just got on a plane to Peru and just intended on going there and staying until in the Amazon until
That's
I came out a different
insane.
person. I didn't even know Spanish.
You're just like,
Wait.
I'm going to Peru. I'm going to drink the juice. And,
Yeah.
because your back, you were trying to heal your back, or was this more of a spiritual?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was more than just like a physical back thing. It was, I knew my belief structures got me here. I knew my programming got me here, to the state of disrepair. And so I needed to change that internal structure in order to get to a different spot. And that I knew that influenced the biology heavily. In fact, that's everything. I mean, you hear nowadays, you hear doctors talk about, well, they got cancer of the liver. Well, they must be a really angry person, like you start to hear doctors talk about this a little bit today, not near as much as what they should, but there's a lot of influence that how you hold the energy in your body, how you hold it on a cellular level, on an unconscious level, all the anger, all the trauma, all the programming that you hold and you carry that you haven't dealt with in your life, that affects your biology, that affects your genetics, epigenetics, right? And so as I went to the Amazon, stayed there, all it took was a month of me staying there and being with shamans in the Maloka out in the Amazon. And I just did ayahuasca until I couldn't, it was crazy.
Pause. So you go to the jungle, sleep in a village in the Amazon for a month with some shamans and native people. Yes?
Yeah, that's how it went. Yeah.
And like right out of the gate, you did a ceremony, or like, what was it like?
Yeah,
I
think it was like the second night we were there. There was a group of us there in this village, a group of white people just, trying to get enlightenment. And, and we were all there for the ride, and we made our own, our own brew. We hammered the ayahuasca. We did our own thing. We put ourselves into it. Man, that by the third, they skip a night in between doses to allow your body to rest so that you can have strength to really face what you need to next. Because what ayahuasca does is it takes you into the internal structures of your trauma and the brain synapses and whatnot, how literally all engage the biology, like this whole concept of how emotions engage biology. Ayahuasca is a plant intelligence that actually encounters that in a very real way. So say, for instance, if you have a fear over dogs and emits phobia, right? And something happened when you were a kid, you got bit, and then every instance you had from then on was self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And then it just kept on wiring the brain to make you afraid of dogs. Because what happens is when you do that, every instance you have, it wires the brain. This is a survival technique for biology. It wires the brain to make you think, hey, I need to be afraid of dogs even more every instance that happens. And so that creates a pathway in the brain that literally gives you a phobia, right? That's how synapses and brains and biology and emotions and all that work. And so what ayahuasca does is it will literally go in, right? This is the scientific fact. It will go in and make you experience being bit by a dog over and over again in the dream state, so that it literally kind of breaks that synapses and writes one where you're embraced by dogs. And you have that experience on the medicine, right? Or you have a breakthrough moment on the medicine where you wake up and you don't have a phobia anymore. And so I knew from research that it would do this. And I thought, man, whatever I've got going on up here that's wiring my brain a certain way, that got me in this accident, that got me, to my body to this state, and got my life quality to this state, I have to challenge that. And I have to challenge it on a very foundational level. And I knew that's what ayahuasca did. And the second time I took it was probably one of the hardest times of my life. One of the hardest nights I've ever had. I mean, it was crazy because it wanted to take me to places and show me things and unwrap my beliefs around fears that I had that I wasn't ready to really do. right? And so I held on to them. And if you hold on to them during a ceremony like that, anybody who's done ayahuasca that's listening to this knows that's a no-no. You don't hold on to shit. You got to let it go, man. And the plant will take you for a ride if you don't. And that was a hard night for me.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: I was always fascinated with ayahuasca, and I wasn't going to do it because I didn't know anybody, and on and on and on. And then we crossed paths, and I found out you had done it several times, and had a shaman and this and that. So I asked if I could go with you, and so you set me up on my first experience. And all I remember you saying is just don't fight it. Don't fight it. Like, I can't give you any advice, but when you're in it, just try not to fight it. Go with the
surrender,
flow and you'll be okay, which is damn near impossible when you first hit the sauce, so to speak. So anyway, you're down there. How many nights did you do, or how many ceremonies?
So we skip a night in between, right? And then we take the weekends off. So I did it 3, 6, 9. I did it 12 times while I was down there. And,
what did your family, the evangelical family, what did they think you were nuts and you had lost your mind?
They just knew that that I had to change my life, and that I was doing my process around that, whatever that was. I don't inform them too much because they're old, they're getting up there a little bit, and man, on their way out, just let them think that I'm okay. And from their state of, from their mind view, their world view, there's no sense in stressing them out in their 70s and 60s. Like, just let them be okay. And me and Christ are still cool. I don't have anything against Christ. He doesn't have anything against me. I like his spirit. I believe that he saved the world at the time that it needed to be saving. We needed a change from an eye for an eye to, like, let's love each other. Right. And so I think it's completely valid and a good way to go. And so I don't have anything against Christianity, and I'm still cool with Christ. And so that's what I tell them. I'm still cool with Christ. I'm good. I don't tell them that I do ritual magic and that, I've delved deep into shamanism, and I understand the connection between us and spirits and the realms and all that stuff, and had experiences with it. I don't get into any. I think it's kind of pointless, But
so you down in the Amazon, you get all juiced up, or is the back feeling better? Or are you having a spiritual
Well, I
awakening?
walked out without a cane.
Okay.
I walked out the Amazon feeling actually very good. Took a boat back down to the airport on the Amazon River and flew out of there back home and started my life anew. And I knew in order to integrate, that's the thing about anybody who's listening to this and wants to do plant medicines, you have to integrate afterwards. You don't just do plant medicines and go about your day when you get back. It doesn't work that way. You need to find counselors and people to support your process of reintegrating into life, because you become a different person. And so if you do it enough, you do. And so the thing that happened with me is I got back into the work that I knew was very true. I actually had the money to do it this time. I had a little bit of a career under me. And so I started doing the Gestalt therapy weekends. I just committed to them. I did not miss a weekend. I became a mentor in that, helping out other people in their transformation work. And it was an awesome time in my life. I did that for like 6 years. That became my life for 6 years, that and shamanism. I kept on doing ayahuasca, kept on getting deeper, doing dietas, which is where you do specific plant medicines to help change the inner wisdom that you carry with you and to be taught by them. So I got deeper and deeper. And then finally I got into the point where I left that work a little bit because it's very grueling. Like for 6 years, I did that every weekend, like that pounding and that mentorship. Like it's 16-hour days, 17-hour days of like putting yourself into people and also people putting themselves into you. It's intense.
Yeah,
and so
I did one weekend of that and it damn near killed me. And you're doing it every weekend like it's soccer practice, which is amazing. So.
Yeah. And so I got out of it after, because what they have you do is have you constantly scan your life and constantly ask yourself questions and start to dissect yourself and your processes and how it's running and how things are set up. Like it's a constant question. You're always asking yourself, why did I just do that? What gave me the impetus to have that kind of conversation with that person? What kind of projection am I doing? What kind of identity am I bringing up? It's a constant inquiry. So it got kind of tiring after a while. And so I kind of just wanted to sit back and kind of do my own thing. And so I found ritual magic, and that kind of went in the line of everything I'd been studying up until that point, all the experiences I had, because the point of shamanism, right, is to understand a greater and a larger connection to the self and to your environment and the earth in general and other people in front of you, right? Deepening that connection is one of the bases of shamanism. That also means the interdimensional aspect of who you are, right? Where all human beings have an interdimensional aspect to them. That what I mean by that is there's something beyond the five senses that we all possess. We all know and have hair stand on our, on the back of our necks at certain points. We have these dynamic and synchronistic experiences, and they're becoming more prevalent, and there's more of a culture about speaking about them today and now. And so it's starting to become more common knowledge and more common language that we start to have these experiences. And so as they unfold, we start to become a part of this movement and this wave. And that's what I started doing, was starting to unpack that a little bit more, that aspect, because I'd already encountered energy work in shamanism. I'd already encountered what it meant to move energy in my body, what it meant to move energy outside of my body and other people. Right. And also that Gestalt therapy work, they did that. Even though it was psychology based, they still understood energy contained in a room, energy contained in a being, energy contained in the emotions. And so I said, what is the study of energy? There's nothing really that studies our psychosocial concept of energy and how we interact with it on a consistent basis, with other people and with ourselves, other than magic. There's nothing that really studies that. Metaphysics in general studies that. And so I started getting into ritual magic and metaphysics a little bit deeper than where I'd been so far. And I actually made it a study as opposed to just an experience. I picked up every book I could on it. I started doing ritual magic. The first time I started doing ritual magic, I did a series of wealth magical rituals. And when I did that, I tripled my income like within a week. And I said, oh shit, this stuff works. This is good. Crazy. And so that from then on, I was hooked, and I just kept on having experiences, studying pantheons, studying deities of old, studying what it meant to connect to the self and to and magic doesn't have to involve spirits at all. Magic is just about the movement of energy in the body and in the physical space you're in through a series of steps that you take, right? That actually engage the laws that govern all of us, the natural laws that govern all of us in this three-dimensional space that we're in. Ritual magic actually engages those laws, right? In a very intentional way. We engage them all the time in a subconscious way.
In English, what does that mean?
So, yeah, what does it actually look like?
And if we dissect like ritual magic, and I understand you do a ritual, right? So if you're doing a ritual, explain a little bit of that part of it, because I think there's obviously a ton of power in rituals in general, like magic, non-magic, right?
Yeah.
So kind of dissect that a little bit for us.
So let's go into how reality actually forms, at least according to metaphysics and my understanding and my experience, right? And so reality actually forms from an energetic state into a solid state, like the three-dimensional state. Like if the table in front of me, the computer that I'm speaking on, all that stuff, that all had to be an idea first. All of it had to be an idea. It had to be in somebody's imagination first, right? Before it became a thing. That means it had to go from the ethereal to the physical, right? And so the way that magic, it starts to engage that process. What is the process of making something that is completely ethereal, right, in my imagination, or that is in a space that isn't physical yet, and making it part of the three-dimensional reality that I contain, right? And so you can do that several ways. I mean, one of the things that ritual does is so valuable. The concept, let's go into it a little bit, because I know that you guys are studying the 4 agreements, Toltec wisdom, that ancient stuff that's really amazing. One of the things that is being impeccable with your word, and they discuss magic a little bit around that. And the reason why he talks about magic a little bit when it comes to being impeccable with your word is because it's a perfect case of us making something that is ethereal real. So right now when I'm speaking, my mouth is a temple, and I'm creating something in this temple, right? That's a thought, that's imagination, and making it real on this podcast and in the Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah.
And so ancient peoples, right, and ancient indigenous peoples, with their great wisdom and their great connection to the earth and the world around them, they started to understand that this is how reality unfolds. Like, if I'm impeccable with my word, then I can create something magnificent, because what I can do is I can start to put energy into how a sound is, and formulate it a certain way, and create a roadmap in my mind for how it actually can evolve, and I can start to add to it, right? And so, to put it simply, without language, without spoken and written word, we don't have culture, we don't have stories, we don't have a way of actually creating the reality around us. That's how pivotal being impeccable with your word, actually, the concept of it actually is the basis of all reality. If give you an example, if we didn't have numbers in our language, right, then we wouldn't have engineering, we wouldn't have computers, we wouldn't have anything. And there are cultures that don't have numbers in their language.
That's
right?
insane.
And that means if you ask them to count like a bunch of marbles, they'll just say there's a lot. They won't even give you a number, right? Because they can't conceptualize it. They can't make it real in their mind. And so if the perception's not there, you're not going to create it.
Yeah.
Right. And so language gives us the perception. Language offers us the opportunity to create a cultural roadmap for what we can evolve into. And that's how we created stories. Those stories gave us society. Those stories gave us our interaction with each other. We weren't even, if you read Sapiens, we weren't even meant to evolve past villages that were 150 large in people, right? And the only way we did that, and that's a book for people who don't know, that Bill Gates and all Silicon Valley went crazy over, because it actually describes the importance of language and storytelling in our lives. Stories are the way we evolve past villages into the society that we have now. If we didn't have stories that told us, right, that we could be more than what we actually are, then we wouldn't have evolved into the societies that we are now. And so magic actually takes advantage of those type of natural laws, the creation of something from nothing, the imagination, and how it can actually produce something physical, right? And so that's one of the first things that we start to engage. We do that by trancing out the mind, because a lot of times the mind's full of bullshit, right? The mind is very programmed from the time that we're little. The mind is always being told what reality is and isn't by your peers, by your teachers, by all these different people. And what happens is you start to buy into these structures for love, right? So I'm give you an example with me, right? I had to say I was a Christian in order to really receive love and affection from my parents. If I went completely counterculture from them from the time I was a baby and just said, fuck Christ
I'm
and
going to
all
the
these
Amazon.
different things. Yeah, I'm going to the Amazon.
I'm
I'm
4 years
12 years
old.
old. See y'all. My mom and dad would have been like, who is this kid? Right? They would have done their best to love me, but it would have been hard. It would have been a struggle for them. Right. And so as children, we perceive all this, we know it. And so we're like, how can I get love? That's always the big question as a child. How can I get love? And we have to buy into the programming of our parents and our peers in order to get that acceptance and love. And so the way you overcome that is through deprogramming yourself through Gestalt therapy and ritual and shamanism. Those all those things have a process around shutting down the mind and the programming, and allowing all the self-talk that you have and the statements you make to yourself that make you small and keep your belief structures really low, into having spiritual authority, into actually taking a hold of your life and actually doing something beyond the programming, right? And receiving a calling for yourself that's a little bit different than just going to your 9 to 5, going to sleep every night, and having the same relationships and the same ways you lose money year after year.
Would you say it's a shift in perspective?
Totally. I mean, perception's everything. If you don't perceive it, it isn't there. We can go back to language, and I mean, it doesn't matter how much if we can go back to language and say there was a study in the 1950s that went to different tribes who had different languages, right? And there were some tribes who didn't have words for orange and yellow. And they found that the English speaking people, right, could remember those colors really well when they showed them to them. When they showed them to the tribes people, they couldn't really conceive what those colors were, right? So if you can't perceive it, you barely remember it, barely even know it's there. You can't do anything with it. You
Yeah.
can't make your life something different with it if you don't know it's there.
It's
Right.
interesting, when I was traveling through some of the rural areas of Africa, I always tell people that, those villages, those people, there's no word anxiety, and there's no word depression in their culture. So they don't experience that because there's no word. And then I think about America. Every conversation you have in America today, people are talking about, oh, I had so much anxiety, I have so much stress, I have so much anxiety, so much stress. I'm like, well, if those words didn't exist, would we be having that? Right.
Right.
So we do call in things with language, and your point about taking something and that, like, nothing has ever been created that was not a thought first, is mind blowing, because it's true. It's like, what the fuck? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's how we literally created our societies. We literally are
Yeah.
created our societies through our imagination. So think about that for a minute. How important is imagination? And that's exactly the platform that magic not only works with, but takes in-depth study to. And really, you start to work with that in a way that has a whole new meaning when you get into ritual magic. And so you start to compound how you can manifest, because you can take, if everything comes from imagination, if everything comes from the ethereal, right, it comes from this interdimensional place that we can just kind of think of, then imagine being able to work with that in a way that has some kind of mastery to it.
Yeah.
That's where ritual takes you. Ritual takes you to a place where you start to have mastery with imagination.
Walk us through an example of any kind of ritual, short or long, to kind of illustrate a little bit of this.
Sure. So,
or an example.
I had a teacher out west who was one of my first teachers in magic. She's a high priest of a covenant and all that stuff. And so, but she had a background in Palo. For those who don't know what Palo is, it's kind of like a Caribbean island. It's one of the island kind of spirit traditions, right? That kind of evolved from Santeria, or was a foundation for Santeria. It's related to Santeria. And so I don't know much about it beyond all of that, because I'm not a Palo practitioner. Just my teacher was. And she gave me a road opener ritual one day and taught me that. And she said, you need to do this once every 3 months. It'll start to completely change your life, change your direction, change your energy, change how you can manifest and how you can pull things in. And she said, what happens is, and I'll go over the components of the ritual. It's actually very simple. You have a white candle and a black candle, right? And what you'll do is you'll take the white candle, put it on your left as you're facing, the table that you're on, and you'll take the black candle, put it on your right. And you'll go into kind of like a meditative state, close your eyes and have some implements there to carve into the candles. You'll take the white candle, put it in your left hand, right? And then close your eyes and imagine your roads are completely open in every direction. There's nothing blocking you. The possibilities are completely limitless. The most important thing is not the envisioning, but the feelings you get, because you manifest from the feelings that are in the body and how it interacts with the imagination. That's how you manifest. And so the feelings you get from that: freedom, joy, complete, uninhibited life, in all directions, all security, connection, all these different things that each person would get. It'd be different for each person, but the emotions you get from having a completely unhindered life, right? With no beliefs that limit you, nothing in the way. Imagine that. And then what you'll do is you'll pull back and write exactly on the candle with those feelings still in the body. You'll program the candle with those feelings by writing the actual feelings on the candle, like success, joy. You'll carve joy into the candle. You'll carve the word, connection in the candle, or whatever really strong feelings came out. Put that candle down, take up the black candle, And then you'll imagine all the blocks in your way. What came up for you when you started to imagine, like what stopped you from really having an unhindered life in that moment you picked up the candle and you start to imagine immense blocks in your way, all the self-talk that limits you, all the ways in which you feel bad about yourself. All of us have not good enough in us, every single one of us. And so that not good enough kind of syndrome, I'm not good enough for this, I'm not good enough for that. What if you were good enough for everything? Right. And so all the talk about the one thing that you want to put in there is fear. You also want to put, blocks, on the candle. But other than that, just tell what came up, just write that into the candle, what feelings came up. Then what you'll do is with the white candle on your left and the black candle on your right, you'll light both candles and you'll sit there and you'll just say, all my roads are open when you stare into the flame of the white candle. And then you go back to the black candle and say, all my blocks are unblocked. All my roads are open. All my blocks are unblocked. And you do that until the candles burn all the way down, which is usually about an hour and a half. If you do little chime candles, it's a long ritual. But what you're doing is about 20 minutes into that, the mind will trance out because you're staring at the flames of candles. You're almost hypnotizing yourself. Right. And when you're saying that out loud, when you're saying this language, because we just spoke about how important language is, right? You are literally reprogramming yourself and your reality, right? The more you say that, because your belief structure starts to change around it. It's like a mantra. That's why mantras are so important, right? That's where the concept for mantras come from, is being impeccable with our words, right? So that we can have a reality that lines up with something that is beyond what we believe we can strive for, and also have like a really high vibrational life. And so with that, what you're doing is you're reprogramming your reality, you're removing blocks, and you're also grafting in like an uninhibited life, freedom in all directions. And so you're reprogramming yourself, and the subconscious is where you want to reach, because the subconscious is what guides 90% of our life, not our conscious brain. If it was just up to our conscious brain, then we could just wake up.
I'd be super rich.
There you go. I mean, you could just wake up and say,
I'd have huge muscles and I'd be super rich.
There you go. That'd be it. That's all it would take, is just the thought of it, right? If there was nothing blocking us, if it was just up to the conscious mind, then that's what we'd have. But it's not. It's up to the subconscious. It's how your subconscious is programmed and the feelings contained in there that decides our lives. And so if you have a practice that can actually reach the subconscious, where it can trance out the mind and start to actually program the subconscious in a specific way and start to reach the emotions contained in there and move those around some, then your belief structures can start to kind of open up. And what that spell does after you do it, right, after you stay committed to it, let the candles burn down, all that stuff, what'll happen is, on a subconscious level, the blocks in your life and the belief structures that are holding you from having an uninhibited life start to shake out a little bit for about 3 months. And things might start to be a little different or a little weird. You might have opportunities pop up out of nowhere that you didn't have before, those kind of things. But once every 3 months you do it, the more it'll start to build into this different life for yourself. And so that's an example of how a ritual works, as far as what it engages. And we can go into language and energy and how it moved it and how it starts to restructure things, how it trances out the programming of the mind, all those things. But we've been doing ritual, Trey, since 50,000 years at least. That's well before Christianity, well before Islam, well before all the modern religions that are out here. We founded our societies really off of our concept and understanding of imagination and ritual, and how that all engages first before it ever became this, well, it's about math and it's about all these other things. It actually was about spirituality first, and spirituality in a way that didn't have this concept of, this God lording over us, but actually our own power and how we embody it and how we engage the natural laws around us. That was there way before anything. And that's how we actually built our evolution before Christianity and whatnot took hold. So,
drinking vine juice in remote rainforests around the world. Eileen, are you following so far?
Sure. When you talk about language, yes. When you start talking about magic, all I know about magic is from Harry Potter. So, that's the extent of my knowledge. But language, I get. It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, my head is spinning. But no, do you think you would have found magic had you not gone into the jungle?
Probably not. Well, I mean, I don't know about that. See, because the Gestalt therapy aspect, they did a lot with energy then. You know, when I moved on from that community and I moved on from what we were doing there, I still was very spiritual minded as far as what I was studying and how I was leaning my life. And I needed a practice of some kind to replace that actually engaged the self in a way that addressed the programming, that addressed the psychology of self, that actually addressed, the body, that addressed the imagination and how we move energy in ourselves. I needed a practice that did that. And the only thing I really found that hit all those markers that was a solo practice was magic.
Does everybody need a practice?
I believe everyone needs a practice. Without a practice, you're kind of just meandering in life. You don't have anything. So remember, I talked about the programming, that we get when we're kids. All of us are doctored when we're kids. We're all programmed. I don't care who you are or how much you think you've overcome. You still view things through the lens of what your parents told you was right or wrong, or what your peers told you was right or wrong. Women are this, men are this, God is this, money is this. This is how you need to think about, society, all those things. Even if you've evolved past it some and you have different thoughts, it's still the opposite of what you had to pull from. Right. And so it's still with you. And so what you have to do is have a practice that starts to challenge that. Otherwise, or give some kind of awareness around it. Otherwise, what happens is you're just a victim to it. Because if it's this unknown thing, right, that's never challenged and that you never have any kind of experience with or are aware of, then it always will guide you in some way that you're unaware of, right? Because it's still with you. It's not something that's going anywhere until you actually challenge it and get it out. And so a practice is necessary for people to not just be victim to themselves and their own programming. In my experience, it's been my experience. And what I've seen from years of doing this kind of work, like I've been in it for years. I've been in these weekends. I've seen people I've seen hundreds of people go through these programs and I've seen all kinds of things. And every single person, if they didn't have something that allowed them the awarenesses and some kind of practice around asking themselves the right questions in life and start to really challenge themselves, then they just remain in their small beliefs most of the time. They never go past, like I said, the 9 to 5, losing a job or losing money the same way every year, or having relationships that are just canned. Man, I thought I was marrying somebody that was other than my mother, but here I am again, or my father or whatever, all of that runs the same for everybody. There isn't a person that's excluded from that. And so in that, you have to have something that grabs a hold of the programming on a consistent basis. Otherwise, you're just a victim to it.
So the practice was what you're saying is the practice allows you to break up the programming a little bit piece by piece, such that a different perspective, a different reality forms for you or for the person.
Yes. Your ability to manifest changes, your ability to see past the small parts of yourself or grow, the ability to, all that changes. And the focus changes. The perception changes too. So it changes what's available to you. Right?
What's black magic? What's black magic? And we've had this conversation before, and I know you don't participate or like negative magic, I don't know if it's black magic, but harmful things. You're not about that, right? But is that what black magic is when people say black magic?
I think that's how it's defined, but I don't know if there's any such thing as black magic in one regard. So let's say this. You go to a car dealership and a salesman talks you into a car you did not want. Okay. He used black magic on you.
Damn right he did.
Yeah. And so let's get into that a little bit. Right. And so what he did was he used the energy and tone of his voice in a specific way on you. Right. In a way that he knew he could manipulate you into getting this car today. Right. And have it be an impulse buy for you in a way that he knew he could just manipulate it. Like he could sense into you and tell you. He's using all of his senses, all of his manipulation of energy, the tone of his voice, everything that he could possibly use to make you buy that car, he did. And he's a professional at it, right? And so he did that. And so he used Black magic. I mean, that is using manipulation in an environment to actually get somebody to do something that they don't want to do. And that's kind of, I guess, how you could describe black magic.
Yeah.
But we all use it on a daily basis with our peers, with our loved ones, unconsciously. What magic does is it makes the unconscious conscious through a practice. And so you consciously start to move. The main thing that magic does is it helps us evolve by fulfilling our desires. Because one of the things that people never talk about in evolution is the concept of fulfilling desire, because desire is a very real part of the human state. And it's been shamed on by religion, right? You aren't allowed to want things. God forbid you want to be rich. God forbid you want, three sex partners. God forbid you want whatever you want. God forbid you want that. It makes you a very sinful person, a very excessive person, somebody who's not an aesthetic, this Buddhist on a mountain, with his hands like this. And so there's a lot of shame around it. And so what magic does is it actually pulls the gravity in the other direction. It says, hey, wait a minute, we actually have to work through our desires, right, in order to find evolution, because it's a very real part of the human experience. And so let's start fulfilling our desires. Let's get rich. Let's have a lot of sex. Let's have fulfilling relationships. Let's have our desires fulfilled. Let's start to do these things. Let's start to have successful businesses. Let's start to really unpack like who and what we are in a way that we can fulfill desires. Because what happens is eventually if you fulfill enough desires, then desires become unimportant as much as connecting with spirit. So it leads you actually to your birthright if you start fulfilling desires. And that's the way magic actually approaches evolution. And so that a lot of people can start to manipulate and then say, well, it's black magic if you want to get rich because you're actually doing a spell for a job that you're going to knock somebody else out of the job and just giving you an unfair advantage. You see what I'm saying? And so the lines get blurred with black magic and white magic. I don't believe in necessarily coining things, one way or another on the spectrum in that, because it's actually about exploring human experience.
Can you put a curse on somebody?
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God.
Have you done?
Eileen, I'm going to put a curse on you. He's going to teach me how, and then I'm going to.
I don't think he would teach you to do that.
He probably wouldn't.
Have you done any spells and then been like, oh, I shouldn't have done that? No. Do you hear of people doing that? Like spells where you're like, oh, that was bad.
People that come into this that are very young.
Yeah.
That don't have life experience behind them and haven't done work on themselves before encountering magic at all, they do some things that they regret. For sure. Because when you're young, you don't have judgment, you don't have wisdom, as much. You don't have life experience to really guide you into like, hey, you know what? Casting curse on that person's really unnecessary. They're just probably going to go down the drain in their own life. There's no need for me to put energy behind that and wrap myself up in it. Why would I want to do that? That kind of thought train doesn't when they get mad, they make decisions out of their feelings more than out of their character.
Yeah.
Right. And so as you age, you start to understand, man, I need to make decisions out of my character, not out of how I feel. Because when I make decisions out of how I feel, then I end up fucked. I'm not good when I make decisions like that. And so if you can make decisions out of your character, you typically won't do anything in magic that you'll regret. And so that's.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that young people, anybody, I guess, comes to you a lot asking to put a spell or how do I put a curse or whatever. And you generally say, well, why don't you try forgiveness first? Why don't you try that magic and then come back? And in other words, trying to direct them away from vengeful, negative feelings and thoughts.
Well, the real question is, what do you want more of in your life?
Black magic. Hello. I mean, that's why we're here on this call. We want black magic. We want to be able to manifest millions of dollars and sex with 3 people at a time. I think that's what I hear him saying.
That's what I heard. I
mean,
heard
that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Brandon,
enlightenment or something. I thought I heard it led to enlightenment.
Here's a question I pose for you because you're a very spiritual person, as you explained in the beginning. You have basically studied all the modalities or been a part of a lot of the different traditions and have a keen understanding and intelligence about the various, I call them modalities, the various spiritual practices from around the world. So I value that more than I would value somebody that grew up in the Christian faith and think they know everything about everything, or the Muslim faith, or agnostic, or whatever. So when somebody comes to you, because I have a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want to create a spiritual practice, or I want to become a spiritual person. I don't know shit about it at all. What do I do? Where do I start? What would you say to somebody
Sure.
like that?
Yeah, I have a program that I do for people like that. It's an 8-week program. It's called Spiritual Self-Mastery. It's a very pompous name, but I kind of had to have a name that
Works.
kind of fit what
Tells
we
you
were going
exactly
for.
what it is.
Yeah. I mean, this is what it is. And so the process that I take people through in that they start to discover a little bit about themselves, right? Most time people that are asking you that question, they've had some kind of spiritual experience. They're like, you know, I saw a ghost, or I something happened in my life I'm just in a position where I know there's something more out there for me, but I don't know what it is. You know, like they're usually in that state, right? So the first thing that I do is I take them through experiences, because I can sit here and talk all day about and try to reason with a person about why magic's real and how it works and all this stuff. None of that really works. The only thing that works is if a person experiences it for themselves, like they have to start experiencing a practice for themselves. And so what typically I'll do is have a person pick up a Kundalini yoga movement or some type of Ashtanga yoga movement that that has like actual God poses in it and poses it. And when I say God poses, what I mean is these are ancient poses that you put the body in that actually change the way you believe and think and experience the body, you know, on a different level. And so those are yoga practices that actually have those kind of things built in, and some form of breath work. Start to experience the body differently, start to experience your breath differently than what you normally do. That'll start to change the course in and the way in which you start to experience the self and your environment. And then I'll give them a very small ritual to do. Like there's a book out there about protection magic that's really good by Damon Brand, and I'll have to get the name of it before the end of the podcast here. But the one of the rituals in there is called the sword ritual, and the sword ritual is really, really awesome. It's very short. It's not long at all. It's not hard. You just have to memorize like 4 names that you normally wouldn't pronounce, you know, in everyday life. But other than that, it's a very, very simple thing to do. And people see tremendous results and have great experiences from just doing that little setup, doing a little Kundalini yoga, nothing long. It can be like 11 minutes of Kundalini yoga, you know, or 20 minutes of Ashtanga yoga, like the first set of Ashtanga standing poses, and then some breath work, and then go into your ritual. And you don't have to believe in Christ or God or Satan. This doesn't have to involve any spirits. You just you on you. And I've had people have tremendous spiritual experiences just from that little setup within 3 days time.
Nice.
So it's experiences that will give people what they need in that regard, not some kind of, so I always teach through experiences. It's important to have the roadmap of language and create the culture. And I do that for people in my program. And that's really important. But beyond that, it's just about experiences. And so that's what I do as a little setup, just breath work, some legit yoga, and a little ritual of some kind that involves and engages the self in a way. Or you can do like, you can go to Modern Mystic Shop and buy like one of our rituals, a road opener ritual, and do it once every 3 months and just keep up with the yoga and just see how it fucking changes your life. It will, you know.
Eileen, I think you need to do about a 17-hour Kundalini practice, repeating the same mantra immediately.
Are you trying to kill me?
Let me tell you something though. That Kundalini if you're out of shape, people are like, no. I mean, you do this for 20 minutes, your arms are going to fall off. It's insane. But you will leave a Kundalini class high as a kite and not know why. It's wild. It changes the brain. Eileen, do you have any questions? We're coming up on time here.
Well, so I'm always interested in people that are in a certain area. Like, what's a realistic representation. So I ask doctors and they say all the medical shows are bullshit, but Scrubs is real because all it is just them fucking around and goofing off. So has there been any magic that's been represented well? Or is it all just like Hollywood?
It's pretty much all Hollywood.
Yeah.
There is, I can't remember the name of the show, but there was one I was watching. I was like, it's kind of close. You can have tremendous experiences in ritual. I've had amazing visitations from spirits. I've had things manifest immediately for me right after a ritual that I was asking for. I've had all kinds of crazy stuff happen. You know, I've kind of had a crazy life, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But that,
yeah,
it's just a continuation of that, you know. And so it's one of those things where there is a little bit of reality when people, you know, you see Sabrina on Netflix or whatever. There is a little bit of reality in the sense that you do start to experience some things that are kind of wild, but it doesn't get, it isn't like, you know, you manifest this horned beast in your living room, you know, or
that would be
whatever.
so cool.
Don't talk about Harry Potter now.
Yeah, it's nothing like Harry Potter. I mean,
well, it seems like it's in Hollywood, like designed almost to scare people, and nothing you've said today is scary.
It's exactly right. That's the thing about magic is ritual magic has been labeled as this very scary thing. And what it does is it allows you an opportunity to start to challenge your programming and fears around your own authority and your own concept of spirituality. Those are immensely important things for you to evolve, right? If you're going to evolve as a human being and become a better human being, if you're going to actually have an impact and gain your purpose in life, if you're going to do that, you have to have your own sense of spiritual authority, right? And you have to have your own sense of self that is outside, some sort of sense of self that is outside of your own programming that you received when you were little. You have to have those things. If you don't claim those things for yourself somehow with some kind of practice you have, you're like I said, you're just going to be, and it's fine for people who want to stay, you know, in their 9 to 5 and continue their divorces and continue, you know, whatever, you know, like it's fine. But if you want to have fulfillment and purpose and understanding of the self that goes beyond where you're currently at in life, you're going to have to pick up a practice that actually addresses those things. I found ritual magic to be the best solo practice for it. There's plenty of group practices out there that are amazing. You know, like I was talking about the Gestalt therapy weekends and whatnot. Those are phenomenal for doing that and moving you forward. But if you want a solo practice, you don't have access to those things. Magic's it, as far as what I can see.
So here's one of the final questions, and we'll do the speed round. Do we call it the speed round? Is that what it is?
We're gonna rename it the speed round because it's the lightning round, but you call it
lightning round. That's what it is.
Magic. Think.
The magic round. Well, we gotta add speed to it. So,
Lightning.
Brandon, you have spoken from the pulpit, where you've told me in the past you just go into a different world when you're speaking in front of tons of people. You've done plant medicine in the jungles, in the Amazon. You've done Gestalt therapy. You've done ritual magic. What is of all the experiences you've had, what has been the most either intense, crazy, wild one that you can think of all of those things? Is there one that stands out where like that meditation was bananas, or that ritual, or that one ayahuasca ceremony, or?
Okay. Yeah. I did so the Gestalt therapy weekends that I talked about, they have programs that take you deeper than just those weekends, right? There was a program called One Dream that I was a part of. And if this isn't the most amazing thing that I've ever experienced, it's hard to describe actually in words. You almost have to experience it to understand it. And most spiritual experiences are like this, right? But what they did one weekend was all weekend, like 14 hours a day, had you work your ass off on this. But what you had to do is you had to sing a song that you picked out over and over again in front of a group of people, in front of a room full of people, until you got such an an innate understanding of the song that the song sung you, is how they would put it. And
What'd you sing?
I sung Broken Arrow by gosh, he's a Native American pop artist, but you may know the song, Who Else Is Going to Bring Your Broken Arrow? Who else is going to leave you a bottle of rain, right?
Oh,
Here we go.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. So that's a beautiful song, amazing song. And so I sung that song over and over again until, like, in front of groups of people, and then people would model back to me where I'm staying weak in my voice. They'd model back to me where my body movements didn't match what I was trying to pull out in the song. It was a process that took a very long time. And by Sunday night, I finally got to the point. It was hard for me to quote unquote, break through and allow the energy of this to really do what it does. The practice is supposed to do. But anyway, I did that to the point to where I entered a whole another place of being when I sung the song. And it became automatic. It became this thing that when I started to sing the song, when I reached that point, that state of flow with the song, where my body matched my movements, my body, everything became one. The whole movement became one thing for me. There wasn't separate parts of me. I wasn't thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm standing in front of this person and singing the song or whatever. There was no thought. It was all just the song living me. And it brought the house down. Like, there were people in the rafters watching me. There were people, like, this house was full of people watching me sing this. And everybody was mirroring back how the energy was flowing through me. And it was an unbelievable, I've never experienced anything like that. That was just incredible. And I discovered a part of myself. Like, if the teacher of that movement, they were like, the point is to get to the point where we have all this programming just on us all the time, right? The point is to open up the flow of that programming just for a moment and see the real being that is contained in this body, that's contained in this experience, right? If you can catch, like, the very real person you are in that just for a moment, it'll change everything about you. And that's what that practice was intended to do. And that's what I did. And ever since then, I've never been the same. And so,
how long had you been singing it? All weekend, or
all weekend? Like I said, 12 hours a day, all weekend.
That's wild.
Yeah. Immense work.
Eileen, what song would you sing?
I couldn't. I was thinking, like, I would have been singing like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, because I would not be able to think of a real song like that.
Yeah.
And then that would
That's
drive everyone
fascinating.
crazy. But now, my question for you is all of our programming negative?
Well, here's the thing about programming is it's unconscious. And so you don't know if it's negative or not. And in my estimation, anything that you don't know about, at the very least, you've got to get a hold of that and just see how it's affecting you. And if it's unknown and you're containing it and it's actually affecting your life, I would say that's a negative experience, even if it leads you to positive results.
Yeah. I mean, what if it's positive?
Yeah, I mean, if it's leading to positive results, that's one thing, but you have to understand that it's a very multi-layered thing, right? And so if it's leading me to positive results, quote unquote, but I'm unaware how it's affecting the rest of my life, it might lead me to positive results in one aspect of my life, but really fuck up how I can manifest money or something else. See, if there's no study of it, then we don't know. So.
Okay.
Fascinating. I could talk for another 12 hours. I mean, we haven't got to any of my questions here, which is like, we'll have to do a part 2.
Yeah,
we'll
have to do a part 2.
Oh yeah, it'd be super cool because we're on this podcast, and the concept of it, we get into how it intersects business, money,
yeah, 100%.
How to lead teams, what it means to build teams from this aspect, what it means to actually have a corporate culture that's structured around some of the metaphysical concepts I've talked about. That'd be fascinating, at least for me. That'd be fascinating. I don't know if anybody else.
Let's do it. Let's do that part 2. Yeah. Where can people find you that are looking for you?
I have a website that I'm working on, but it didn't up yet. So people can just email me, bnight80@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I don't check it much. I'm not a social media guy. So I'm on Instagram as @CBrandonKnight, and on Facebook as Brandon Knight. Message me or get in my DMs. Just let me know what's going on.
Slide into my DMs like
Yeah.
magic, because you can do magic. Brandon, okay, we're well over time. Tell us about one time you told me about a priestess or a witch or somebody you studied under out west who could move things or move her blood or do something with her blood. Do you recall this?
Yeah, I do. It's actually, I won't say her name with the podcast because people will look her up and freak out and excommunicate me from society. But but the thing that she does is she works a lot with her own blood, and blood is very interesting because blood is your unique signature, right? And so that's a whole nother podcast, I guess. But magic and blood have an interesting relationship because the imagination and the body have to meet in order to manifest something, right? So you have to pull it from the brain into the working hands, and the blood that flows through you has to move the body and everything like that in order to actually make a table or build a house or whatever, right? And so she works a lot with blood and with ancestry and things like that, and her own sense of self from that very base level. And so she's able to she's been practicing since she was 14 or 12 or something like that, really young. And she's a hard worker. She's not somebody that sits back and just expects life to do whatever. She works really, really hard. And so she devoted her life to ritual. And she's got to a point where she can just do a ritual like in a subway, right? She can, if a man's next to her that's being untoward or something like that, and accosting her in some way, she can kind of just move her blood in her body specific way and kind of move her body specific way and do a ritual right there in the subway, and the man will back off from her, right? And that kind of thing. Like she'd been practicing for so long, she can, do some pretty amazing things. So the people listening to the podcast won't believe me if I told you some of the things that I've seen her do.
It's so good. All right, brother. Well, listen, we appreciate this. We'll link your email and your handles when we shoot this out. And we're definitely coming back for a part 2 now that we got the baseline of a little bit of the theory behind the magic.
A little bit. I was kind of hodgepodge, man. I was kind of all over the place. I apologize, but I get so excited about this.
You're trying to explain 7 billion years of spirituality into an hour on a computer. So I think you did a good job. And
I hope so.
Next time we'll go even deeper and we'll get to some of my questions here.
Are you not entertained?
Hey, here's a question. Do you believe in God?
I believe in the concept of a divine force. So I guess you could say I believe in God. I don't believe in some man with a beard behind the clouds. I think that's bullshit. But I think that definitely that there's a divine intelligence that, and I mean, there's a lot of great stuff on Gaia TV around all that, around Elohim and what it actually means, and the 6 dimensions of creation and all that stuff that actually makes sense. It actually lines up with a lot of what I've studied and whatnot. But yes, I believe there's definitely divine intelligence for sure.
What happens when we die?
Well, no question we continue on. How we continue on is up to us. So how we continue on is we actually have a lot more control over that than what we've been led to believe, by popular religions. We just think we either go to heaven or hell or whatever, but there's actually a lot of options when you die. So, but that's another podcast too. There's a lot to that.
Next podcast, let's get into the other side a little bit and see what they're doing over there and how we can tap into that. Because I have love angels, Brandon. Obviously, I have 3 love angels that only come to Eileen most of the time, which is super fucked up. But that's the way the spiritual world works. They just toy with you. But we appreciate it, brother. We'll be in touch. And
thank you.
Keep on elevating consciousness.
Yeah, man, doing my best.
Eileen. All right. Take care.
All right. Bye, y'all. It's been
Bye.
fun.
Thank you.
Bye.